The emergency transmission reached Earth at 0347 hours Geneva time. 3 agricultural colonies in the outer rim had gone silent within minutes of each other. The first responders found only ash and glass where cities once stood. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the UCDF Pacific Fleet headquarters, watching the death toll climb on the main display. The numbers moved too fast to feel real. 1 million, 3 million, 7 million. When the counter finally stopped at 11,200,000, the room fell silent. How? Someone whispered. The answer came 3 hours later when the data cores from surviving satellites were recovered. The attack had been surgical and coordinated. Orbital strikes from 16 ships targeting population centers with precision weapons. No military installations hit. No strategic value. Just civilians going about their morning routines, children walking to school, farmers tending crops. Sarah felt something cold settle in her chest. Her sister Maria had lived on New Hebron with her husband and 3 children. New Hebron was gone. The satellite footage showed nothing but a crater where the capital city had been. She closed her eyes and forced herself to breathe. Later. She could grieve later. Who did this? She asked, her voice steady despite everything. The intelligence officer pulled up a display. We have positive identification on the vessels. They're Verani collective warships, mid-tier power, about 400 light-years spinward. We've had minimal contact with them. A few trade negotiations, nothing significant. Why would they attack us? We don't know yet, Admiral. Across the planet, billions of humans woke to the news. The images were everywhere. Entire cities reduced to melted stone. Bodies that couldn't be identified because there was nothing left to identify. Children's toys in the rubble. A school bus twisted and burned. The response was immediate and visceral. Protests erupted in every major city. Some demanded peace, most screamed for revenge. The United Nations emergency session was scheduled for that evening. Ambassador Marcus Okonkwo arrived at the UN building in New York to find it surrounded by crowds. The noise was deafening. People wanted answers. They wanted justice. They wanted someone to tell them this wouldn't happen again. Inside the assembly hall, representatives from every nation and colony gathered. The air felt heavy with grief and rage. Marcus had been a diplomat for 30 years, had navigated countless crises, but this was different. This was personal for everyone in the room. Almost everyone had lost someone. Prime Minister Elena Volkov of Earth's unified government took the podium. She looked older than she had that morning. The weight of 11 million deaths showed in every line of her face. We have attempted contact with the Verani collective, she began. They have not responded to any communication. However, our intelligence division has intercepted and translated several internal Verani military transmissions. She nodded to a technician. The hall's speakers crackled to life. The first voice was calm, almost casual. The translation appeared as text on every screen. Strike Package 3 has achieved complete neutralization of target zone. No effective resistance encountered. A second voice responded, Excellent. Human defensive response remains minimal. They appear unprepared for coordinated assault. A third voice carrying more authority. This confirms our strategic assessment. Human colonies are acceptable losses for territorial mapping purposes. Their soft military posture makes them ideal for dominance display to neighboring species. The recording continued. The Verani discussed the attacks like scientists discussing an experiment. They debated whether to strike more colonies or wait to observe Earth's response. One suggested they had sufficiently demonstrated their superiority. Another argued they should eliminate a few more colonies to ensure the message was clear. Mark the agricultural worlds as low-priority targets. The authority voice concluded. Minimal strategic value, maximum psychological impact on the human population. If they resist territorial adjustments, we can neutralize their outer settlements with minimal resource expenditure. The recording ended. The silence in the assembly hall was absolute. Marcus felt his hands shaking. They hadn't attacked because of resources or territory. They had murdered 11 million people as a test, a demonstration, a way to prove they could. The anger in the room was palpable now, a living thing that seemed to fill every space. Volkov spoke again, and her voice was different. Colder. Harder. The Verani collective chose to make this a matter of survival. They targeted civilians to test our resolve. They discussed our people as acceptable losses. They see mercy as weakness, She paused, looking across the assembly. I am calling for a vote on Emergency Resolution 7. Full military mobilization, complete economic conversion to war production, and authorization for the United Colonial Defense Force to respond with any and all means necessary to ensure this never happens to humanity again. Marcus stood. Prime Minister, I must advocate for diplomatic solutions. We should attempt negotiation before— Negotiation? Someone shouted from the back. They killed 11 million people. Other voices joined in. The chamber erupted in arguments. Marcus tried to speak over the noise, tried to explain that escalation could lead to even more deaths, but his words were drowned out. The vote was called. Resolution 7 passed with 97% approval. That night, Sarah Chen sat in her office, staring at a photo of her sister's family. Maria smiling, holding her youngest daughter. It had been taken 3 months ago during a video call. Sarah had promised to visit for the holidays. There was a knock on her door. Her executive officer entered with a data pad. Admiral, you've been requested at a classified briefing tomorrow morning. Defense Ministry headquarters. They're calling in all fleet commanders. Sarah nodded without looking up from the photo. Admiral, what do you think they're planning? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she set the photo down and met his eyes. War, she said simply. Real war. Not the limited engagements we've fought before. They killed 11 million of us to make a point. We need to make sure no one ever thinks that's acceptable again. How do we do that? Sarah didn't answer. She wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer yet. Across human space, the machinery of war began to move. Shipyards that had been building colony vessels started producing warships. Factories converted production lines from consumer goods to weapons. Scientists and engineers were pulled from civilian projects and put to work on military research. Marcus Okonkwo sat in his apartment, watching the news feeds. Every channel showed the same thing. Memorials for the dead, interviews with survivors from nearby systems who had received the refugees, the few who had escaped before the strikes. One woman described seeing the ships arrive. She had been visiting a friend on the edge of the colony. They saw the orbital bombardment begin and ran for the emergency shuttles. She made it out. Her husband and 2 sons didn't. What do you want to happen? The interviewer asked. The woman's face hardened. I want them to feel what we felt. I want them to know they made a mistake. I want them to understand what it means to attack Earth. Marcus turned off the screen. He understood her rage. He felt it too, but he also understood history. He knew what happened when civilizations abandoned restraint in favor of revenge. He opened his secure terminal and began drafting a message to the Verani government. It would probably be ignored. They might not even read it. But he had to try. Someone had to try to stop what was coming, because Marcus Okonkwo had read the preliminary reports from Defense Ministry analysts. He had seen the projections and strategic assessments. He knew what kind of response was being planned, and it terrified him far more than the Verani ever could. The war room 3 levels below the Defense Ministry was cold and sterile. Admiral Sarah Chen sat at a long table with 9 other fleet commanders, each representing a different sector of human military operations. Prime Minister Volkov stood at the head of the table, flanked by generals and intelligence directors. What you're about to see is classified at the highest level, Volkov began. Nothing discussed here leaves this room without authorization. A holographic display filled the center of the table. It showed Verani space, a cluster of 42 star systems connected by known trade routes and military patrol paths. Director Harrison from Strategic Intelligence stepped forward. We've spent the last 2 months mapping every Verani asset. Every world, every station, every ship, population centers, military installations, industrial capacity, agricultural production, everything. The display zoomed in on individual systems, showing detailed breakdowns of populations and infrastructure. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't reconnaissance for a military campaign. This was something else. The Verani Collective has a total population of approximately 25 billion across their territory. Harrison continued. Their military consists of roughly 3,000 warships, which sounds impressive until you realize they're spread across 42 systems. Their technology is comparable to ours, perhaps slightly behind in certain areas. Their weakness, he said, highlighting several systems, is centralization. Most of their population lives on 12 core worlds. Their food production comes from 8 agricultural planets. Their military construction happens in 4 shipyard systems. They're efficient but not redundant. General Dmitry Volkov, no relation to the Prime Minister, stood. Our strategic analysis suggests that the Verani expected a limited response to their attack. They anticipated we might strike 1 or 2 military targets, protest through diplomatic channels, then accept their dominance in the region. They fundamentally misunderstood what happens when you attack Earth. He pressed a control and the display changed. Red indicators appeared across all Verani systems simultaneously. "This is Operation Reckoning," he said quietly. Sarah stared at the display. Every Verani world was marked. Every station. Every major population center. "This can't be what I think it is," Admiral Thompson said, his voice tight. "It's exactly what you think it is," General Volkov replied. Simultaneous strikes across all Verani systems. Primary targets include military installations, but also infrastructure critical to their survival as a spacefaring civilization. Power generation, food production, water purification, orbital elevators, shipyards, everything. "You're talking about hitting civilian targets," Sarah heard herself say. "We're talking about removing their ability to threaten us ever again," the general corrected. "They demonstrated that they're willing to murder millions of our civilians without provocation. We cannot allow them the capacity to do so again." Admiral Thompson stood up. "This is genocide. You're describing the systematic destruction of an entire species." "We're describing survival," Prime Minister Volkov said sharply. "They killed 11 million of us as a test. What happens in 10 years when they decide to test us again? What happens when other species see that attacking Earth has minimal consequences?" "There have to be alternatives," Sarah said. "Occupation, disarmament, war crime tribunals." Director Harrison shook his head. "We ran the projections. Occupation of 42 systems would require forces we don't have. It would take decades, cost trillions, and result in a grinding insurgency that would kill millions more on both sides. Disarmament only works if they comply, and history shows that defeated powers rearm the moment they're able. Tribunals are meaningless without the force to back them up. So we kill them all instead?" Thompson's voice was rising. "We become the monsters. We become survivors," Volkov said. "And we send a message to every species in the galaxy. Earth protects its own. Attack us and there is no negotiation. No surrender, no mercy. Only extinction." The room fell silent. Sarah looked around the table at faces she had known for years. Good people. Moral people. And she saw the same struggle in their eyes that she felt in her chest. "What about Ambassador Okonkwo's diplomatic efforts?" she asked. Volkov's expression darkened. "Ambassador Okonkwo has been attempting contact with the Verani government for 2 months. They have responded exactly once with a brief message expressing regret for any misunderstanding and suggesting we adjust our territorial expectations. They don't see what they did as wrong. They see it as policy." She pulled up another display showing a timeline. 4 weeks ago, a Verani strike force attacked the Kepler mining station. 200,000 dead. They're probing our defenses, testing our response time. They think we're weak. They think we'll accept losses rather than fight. Sarah felt the cold in her chest spread. Her sister, her nieces and nephew. 200,000 more families destroyed. "When do we launch?" she asked quietly. 6 months, General Volkov said. "We need time to position our fleets, manufacture specific weapon systems, and complete intelligence gathering. 6 months to prepare. Then we strike everywhere at once." Over the following months, Earth transformed. Every shipyard worked around the clock. The orbital stations that once built colony ships now produced warships at a pace history had never seen. Scientists developed new weapons, new tactics, new ways to destroy planetary infrastructure from orbit. Captain David Torres watched his Marines train for urban combat operations. They drilled endlessly on boarding stations, securing shipyards, neutralizing ground-based defenses. He knew what they were training for, even if his men didn't yet. One evening, his executive officer found him in his quarters. "Sir, the new tactical briefings are in. They're extensive." Torres opened the files and started reading. Procedures for orbital bombardment of civilian infrastructure. Target priorities that included hospitals and schools that might be converted to military use. Rules of engagement that essentially had no rules. "This is wrong," his XO said quietly. Torres didn't respond immediately. He thought about the images from New Hebron, the crater where 1 million people had lived. The children's toys in the rubble, "What's wrong is letting them do it again," he finally said. "What's wrong is showing mercy to people who showed us none." But his voice lacked conviction, and they both knew it. Ambassador Marcus Okonkwo sat in his office at the diplomatic center, surrounded by unanswered messages. He had sent 47 formal communications to the Verani government. He had reached out through back channels, through intermediary species, through every contact he could find. The responses were dismissive when they came at all. The Verani seemed genuinely confused about why Earth was upset. In their view, they had simply asserted dominance over a weaker neighbor. This was normal. This was how species interacted. "They don't understand," he said to his assistant. "They literally cannot comprehend why we're reacting this way." "Maybe they need to understand," his assistant replied, her voice hard. Her brother had died on New Hebron. Marcus wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. He had spent his career believing that all conflicts could be resolved through dialogue, that reason and empathy could bridge any divide. But how did you reason with someone who saw the murder of millions as acceptable policy? That night, Sarah Chen received her official orders. She read them 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Her fleet would be responsible for 8 Verani systems. Detailed target lists accompanied the orders. Military installations first, then infrastructure, then any ships attempting to flee. Complete neutralization was the objective. No half measures. At the bottom of the document was a single line that made her hands shake. Civilian casualties estimated at 3.2 billion across designated target systems. She sat in the dark, staring at that number. 3 billion, 200 million, more than the entire population of Earth in the 21st century. Gone because she would give the orders. Her door chimed. She didn't respond, but it opened anyway. Admiral Thompson entered, looking as haunted as she felt. "You read your orders?" he asked. She nodded. "Are we really going to do this?" Sarah thought about her sister. About the 11 million, about the 200,000 at Kepler Station. About what would happen if Earth showed weakness now. "Yes," she said. "We're going to do this." "God help us," Thompson whispered. "I don't think God's listening anymore," Sarah replied. Outside, across human space, fleets gathered. Weapons were loaded. Soldiers trained. And a countdown began toward the day when humanity would teach the galaxy what it meant to make Earth bleed. Operation Reckoning began at 600 hours, coordinated across 40 Verani systems simultaneously. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UCDF Wellington, watching her tactical display as her fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly on schedule. "All ships report ready status," her tactical officer announced. "Weapon systems armed. Target locks confirmed." Sarah took a breath. This was it. The point of no return. "Execute primary strike package," she ordered. The Wellington and 40 other ships opened fire. Missiles streaked toward Verani military satellites and orbital defense platforms. The initial response was confused. The Verani had detected human fleets approaching, but hadn't expected simultaneous attacks across their entire territory. Within 20 minutes, orbital defenses around the primary target world were eliminated. Sarah watched the tactical display update, showing friendly green icons and vanishing red ones. Clean, efficient, just like the simulations. Secondary targets acquired, weapons control reported, power generation facilities and water treatment plants marked. This was where it stopped being a military operation. The targets on her screen were civilian infrastructure. Destroy them and millions would die slowly over the following weeks. "Admiral?" her executive officer prompted quietly. Sarah closed her eyes for 1 second, saw her sister's face, saw the crater where New Hebron had been. "Fire," she said. The missiles launched. On the planet below, power plants exploded. Water treatment facilities collapsed. Orbital elevators severed, crashing to the ground. The Verani population centers went dark as their life support systems failed. Across Verani space, the same scene repeated 40 times. Human fleets appeared, destroyed military assets, then systematically dismantled the infrastructure that kept billions alive. The Verani military response was disorganized. They had never fought a war like this. Their ships rushed to defend worlds, only to find multiple human fleets already in position. When they concentrated forces, they left other systems undefended. When they spread out, human ships destroyed them in detail. Captain David Torres led his Marines aboard the Verani military station designated Hephaestus 9. It was a shipyard facility, with 6 partially constructed warships in various stages of completion. Intelligence said 3,000 Verani military personnel worked here, plus another 2,000 civilian contractors. The assault was textbook perfect. Torres's Marines breached the hull, neutralized the defenders, and secured key sections within 2 hours. Casualties were minimal. 13 Marines wounded, none killed. Approximately 800 Verani military personnel dead, the rest captured or fled. Then came the second part of the orders. Set demolition charges on all construction bays, Torres ordered. Reactor containment, structural supports, life support systems. We're bringing this station down. His demolitions expert hesitated. Sir, there are still civilians in the habitat sections. Families of the workers, maybe 5,000 people. Torres felt something twist in his gut. Are they evacuating? Some are trying, sir. But there aren't enough escape pods. And our fleet has orders to intercept any ships leaving the station. Torres stood there, watching Verani civilians run through the station's corridors on his helmet display. Parents carrying children, old people struggling to keep up. They looked almost human in their panic. Sir, his demo expert prompted. Set the charges, Torres said quietly. We have our orders. The Marines planted their explosives and withdrew. Torres watched from his assault ship as the station broke apart. The explosions were precise, calculated to ensure complete destruction. He tried not to think about the life signs that winked out on his scanner. The war continued. Weeks became months. Human fleets moved from system to system, executing their target lists with brutal efficiency. The Verani tried to adapt, but they were fighting an enemy that had committed everything to their destruction. Admiral Chen coordinated strikes on agricultural worlds. Food storage facilities burned. Irrigation systems collapsed. Genetic seed banks were destroyed. The Verani would starve even if the fighting stopped tomorrow. She told herself it was necessary. She told herself they had started this. She told herself that hesitation meant more human deaths, but at night she couldn't sleep. The numbers haunted her. Death toll estimates updated daily. 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, and climbing. Ambassador Marcus Okonkwo appeared before the Galactic Council, facing representatives from 70 species. They demanded answers, explanations, justification for what Earth was doing. The Verani Collective initiated unprovoked strikes against civilian targets, Marcus said, his voice flat and cold. They murdered 11 million humans as a test. They struck again when we tried to negotiate. They gave us no choice. You're committing genocide, the Thelian ambassador shouted. This goes beyond any reasonable response. Marcus felt rage flare in his chest. Where were you? Where were any of you when they attacked us? Did you offer aid? Did you condemn the Verani? Did you threaten sanctions or intervention? Silence, you did nothing, Marcus continued. You watched them kill 11 million humans and you did nothing. Now you want to judge us for ensuring it never happens again? We're teaching the galaxy a lesson that apparently needed teaching. Earth will not be a victim. Earth will not be tested. Attack us and we will end you. The council erupted in arguments. Species called for sanctions against Earth. Others called for military intervention. But none moved to action. They all understood what Earth had become. Dangerous, capable of anything, not to be threatened. Back in Verani space, the situation deteriorated. The Verani government finally sent a formal surrender offer. Complete disarmament, reparations, territory concessions. Anything Earth wanted. Prime Minister Volkov rejected it. Surrender doesn't undo what they did, she told her cabinet. It doesn't bring back 11 million people. And it doesn't guarantee they won't rebuild and strike again in 20 years. We've come this far. We finish it. The order went out. No surrender. No quarter. Operation Reckoning continued. Captain Torres found himself on Verani Prime, the species' homeworld. His Marines secured a military command center while orbital strikes eliminated government buildings and communications infrastructure. The city around them was burning. He watched a Verani family huddle in a destroyed building. Parents shielding 2 children, all of them injured, waiting for death. The youngest child couldn't have been more than 5 years old. She had dark eyes, and she stared at Torres with an expression he would never forget. Not fear, not hate, just confusion. She didn't understand why this was happening. Torres turned away, kept walking, kept following orders. That night he sent a message to Admiral Chen. His hand shook as he typed. Admiral, Are we still the good guys? The response came 4 hours later. Chen's face appeared on his screen. She looked older than he remembered. Hollow. No, she said after a long silence. But we're alive. And we're making sure no one ever does this to us again. Torres deleted the message. Then he pulled up the casualty reports. His Marines had killed 4,000 Verani today. Tomorrow's objective would probably add another 6,000. And this was just one platoon, in one city on one world. The numbers across the entire operation were beyond comprehension. 15 billion dead so far. 10 billion more would likely die in the following months from starvation, disease, and infrastructure collapse. The Verani had killed 11 million humans. Earth was killing 25 billion Verani. Torres sat in the dark, cleaning his rifle, and wondered if Sarah Chen was right. Maybe they were still alive. Maybe they were still human. But he didn't feel human anymore. None of them did. Above the planet, Admiral Chen received reports from all theaters. The Verani military was broken. Their government was in hiding. Their population was dying. Victory was certain. She should have felt relief, satisfaction, justice. Instead, she felt nothing at all. She pulled up an old photo. Her sister Maria, smiling, holding her children. Chen had carried that photo through the entire war. It was supposed to remind her why she was fighting. Now it just reminded her of what she had become. Admiral, her executive officer said quietly, Fleet Command is asking for your status report. Chen looked at the tactical display one more time. All those red icons winking out one by one, each representing thousands or millions of lives. Tell them we're proceeding as planned, she said. We'll finish the job, because that's what Earth had become. Efficient, ruthless, unstoppable, and absolutely terrifying to everyone watching. The siege of Verani Prime lasted 6 months. The homeworld was heavily defended, with orbital platforms, ground-based weapons, and a population desperate enough to fight with whatever they had. Admiral Sarah Chen commanded the operation from orbit, watching her fleet slowly dismantle every defense. The Verani government sent daily surrender offers. Each was rejected. Prime Minister Volkov's orders were clear. No negotiations, no mercy, complete neutralization of the Verani as a spacefaring species. Captain David Torres led ground operations in the capital city. His Marines moved street by street, clearing military resistance. But the lines between military and civilian had blurred. Verani citizens fought with whatever weapons they could find. Old people threw rocks. Children set ambushes. Everyone knew they were already dead, so they fought anyway. Torres watched a building collapse after an orbital strike. His scanner showed 137 life signs going dark. He didn't know if they were military or civilian. It didn't matter anymore. Captain, his communications officer called. We're getting a distress signal. Verani military frequency, but the message is strange. Torres listened to the translation. A Verani officer was broadcasting from a bunker complex, but he wasn't calling for reinforcements or threatening retaliation. He was reading poetry, Verani poetry, about their homeworld, their history, their culture. Recordings of their music played in the background. Sir, should we target that position? Torres stared at the coordinates. Just another bunker. Just another target. No, he said finally. Let them finish. It won't change anything. The broadcast continued for 3 hours. Poetry, music, history, a civilization's last testament before it went silent forever. Then the bunker's power failed, and the transmission ended. Torres never reported it. Across Verani space, human fleets hunted down the remaining population. Refugee ships tried to flee to neighboring systems. Most were intercepted and destroyed. Some made it to neutral territory, where other species reluctantly granted asylum. A few thousand Verani survived this way, scattered across the galaxy. But the species itself was finished. Their worlds were dead or dying. Their infrastructure was destroyed. Their culture was being erased system by system. In the ruins of Verani Prime's National Archives, a xenoanthropologist named Dr. Lisa Park made a discovery. She was part of the occupation force, cataloging Verani cultural artifacts before they were lost forever. The archives contained everything: art, literature, music, scientific records, historical documents. Dr. Park spent weeks sorting through the materials, translating what she could. The Verani had been an old species with thousands of years of recorded history. Their art was beautiful, complex, deeply emotional. Then she found the military records from the attack on human colonies. The orders had come from a faction within the Verani military called the Expansion Directorate. They had argued for years that the Verani needed to demonstrate strength to maintain their position in the region. The civilian government had opposed the plan, but the Directorate had acted anyway, hoping success would justify their actions. The government had been preparing to arrest the Directorate leadership when Earth's response began. Internal communications showed confusion and panic at the human reaction. They had expected protests, maybe a limited strike. Not total war. Dr. Park read through document after document, her hands shaking. The attack hadn't been government policy. It had been a rogue military operation. The Verani government had been trying to make peace when Earth rejected their surrender. She compiled her findings into a report and sent it up the chain of command. 3 days later, she was ordered to Admiral Chen's flagship. Chen sat in her office, reading Dr. Park's report for the third time. The xenoanthropologist stood at attention, waiting. "This is accurate?" Chen asked quietly. "Yes, Admiral. The evidence is conclusive. The civilian government never authorized the attacks. They were actually planning to prosecute the responsible parties." "Does it matter?" Chen asked. 11 million humans are still dead. "It matters because we're killing an entire species for the actions of a few thousand military officers. The other 25 billion Verani are innocent." Chen was quiet for a long time. She thought about her sister, about the war, about everything they had done over the past 2 years. "Dr. Park, how many people know about this report?" "Just me and my immediate staff. Maybe 6 people total." Chen pulled up a file deletion command on her terminal. Her finger hovered over the key. "Admiral, you can't destroy this. This is proof that what?" Chen interrupted. "That we're massacring an innocent population? That everything we've done was wrong? That we should have stopped months ago?" "Yes," Dr. Park said desperately. "We can still stop. We can spare the survivors. We can do nothing," Chen said flatly. "Earth's policy is set. The operation continues. And if this information gets out, it will destroy everything. The government will fall. Our military will fracture. And every species in the galaxy will see us as the monsters we've become." She pressed the key. The report vanished from the system. "This conversation never happened," Chen said. "You never found those records. If you speak about this to anyone, I'll have you arrested for treason. Do you understand?" Dr. Park stared at her in horror. "You're covering up genocide." "I'm protecting Earth," Chen replied. "Now get out." After the xenoanthropologist left, Chen sat alone in the dark. She pulled up the archived files one more time. Read about the Verani government's attempts at peace, their confusion at Earth's response, their desperate final days trying to surrender. Then she deleted those too. She told herself it was necessary. That doubt would weaken Earth's resolve. That second-guessing wouldn't bring back the dead, but she knew the truth. She was destroying evidence because facing it would destroy her, and she couldn't break, not now. Not when they were so close to finishing. The Battle of Kara Nebula came 2 months later. The last organized Verani resistance made a stand there, hoping to buy time for refugee ships to escape. 200 Verani warships against 800 human vessels. It wasn't even close. The human fleet destroyed the Verani in 4 hours. No quarter given. No survivors taken. When the battle ended, the nebula was filled with debris and bodies. Admiral Thompson, commanding one of the task forces, watched the carnage and felt nothing. He had felt nothing for months now. The guilt and horror had burned away, leaving only a hollow efficiency. "Sir, we're detecting refugee ships attempting to jump to faster than light," his tactical officer reported. "Orders?" Thompson thought about objecting, about letting them go, about showing one small mercy in this ocean of death. "Intercept and destroy," he ordered. The refugee ships died without firing a shot. Back on Earth, Captain Torres was court-martialed. He had refused an order to destroy a Verani refugee vessel in the final stages of the war. The ship had carried 3,000 civilians, mostly children, fleeing to neutral space. Torres had let them go. His trial lasted 3 days. The evidence was clear. He had disobeyed direct orders during wartime. The penalty was death. Prime Minister Volkov attended the sentencing. She looked at Torres. saw a good man broken by what he had done, what he had been ordered to do. Captain Torres, you are found guilty of dereliction of duty and insubordination. You are stripped of rank and will be imprisoned for the remainder of the war. Not death. She couldn't bring herself to order that. Torres accepted the sentence without comment. In truth, prison was a relief. At least there, he wouldn't have to kill anyone else. Ambassador Marcus Okonkwo addressed the Galactic Council one final time. The other species had formed a coalition, threatening military intervention if Earth didn't stop the genocide. Marcus looked at them with dead eyes. "You think you can stop us?" he asked quietly. "You who did nothing when 11 million humans died? You want to fight Earth now? Please try. We've already crossed every line. We've already become the monsters you fear. What's a few more billion deaths?" The threat worked. The coalition collapsed. No one wanted to fight Earth. No one wanted to risk becoming the next Verani. Earth stood alone, feared and untouchable. The last Verani stronghold fell on day 713 of Operation Reckoning. A hidden habitat in an asteroid field housing maybe 10,000 survivors. The fleet destroyed it without hesitation. Sarah Chen received the final casualty report. 25,400,000,000 Verani dead. The few thousand survivors scattered across neutral space were all that remained of a species that had existed for millennia. She filed the report and poured herself a drink. Then another. Then another. That night she dreamed of her sister. But in the dream, Maria looked at her with the same expression that Verani child had. Not hate, just confusion. Not understanding why this had to happen, Chen woke up screaming. 5 years after the last Verani habitat was destroyed, Earth dedicated the Remembrance Wall. It stretched for 3 kilometers through the center of Geneva, black stone engraved with 11,200,000 names. Every human who died in the Verani attacks. The dedication ceremony was attended by millions. Prime Minister Elena Volkov gave the opening speech. "We remember," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "We remember those who were taken from us. We remember why we fought. We remember that Earth protects its own." The crowd applauded. Many were crying. Families touched names on the wall, remembering parents, children, siblings, friends. The wall became a place of pilgrimage, a reminder of what was lost. What the wall didn't mention was the 25 billion Verani who died in response. That number existed only in classified military records. Official Earth government statements referred only to necessary military action and appropriate response to aggression. Most humans didn't ask about the details. They didn't want to know. Admiral Sarah Chen retired 3 months after the war ended. She gave no interviews, made no public statements, simply disappeared from public life. She bought a small house in rural Scotland, far from cities and people. The isolation didn't help. The numbers followed her everywhere. The tactical displays haunted her dreams. She saw the death toll climbing, watched planets die, heard the screams she had never actually heard because she had been safe in orbit, giving orders. She drank. It was the only thing that quieted the noise in her head. 2 years after retirement, she was found dead in her home. The official cause was heart failure. Her executive officer, who had stayed in touch, knew it was suicide. The empty bottles and the goodbye letter made that clear. The letter was sealed by government order. No one read it except Prime Minister Volkov, who read it once, then burned it. Chen had written only one sentence. "I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to live with what I did." Volkov burned the letter because she couldn't afford for anyone to see it. Earth's victory had to remain righteous. Doubt would destroy everything they had built on top of those 25 billion corpses. Captain David Torres died in prison, 2 years into his sentence. He had stopped eating 3 weeks earlier. The doctors tried to force-feed him, but he fought them until they gave up. He weighed 90 pounds at the end. His last words to the chaplain were, "Tell them I'm sorry." "Tell all of them I'm sorry," the chaplain asked who he meant. Torres didn't answer. Maybe he meant the humans who died. Maybe he meant the Verani. Maybe he meant everyone. 30 years after his death, Torres was posthumously pardoned. The official statement praised his service to Earth and called his final act of mercy a complex moral decision made in the heat of war. They built a small memorial for him, honoring the Marine who had maintained his humanity in impossible circumstances. It was all lies, and everyone involved knew it. But Earth needed heroes. even fake ones. Ambassador Marcus Okonkwo wrote a memoir 5 years after the war. He titled it Necessary Evil and defended every decision Earth had made. The attack was unprovoked. The response was proportional to the threat. Genocide was justified because the alternative was accepting victimhood. The book became a bestseller on Earth. It was banned in 73 other star systems. Okonkwo didn't care. He toured Earth, giving speeches explaining why Earth had been right, why they had no choice, why 25 billion deaths were acceptable. In private, he drank as much as Chen had. His wife left him after 3 years. His children stopped speaking to him. He died alone in a hotel room at 68. Another heart attack that everyone suspected wasn't entirely natural. His memoir was still required reading in Earth military academies 40 years later. Prime Minister Volkov served until her death at 83. She won re-election twice more after the war, each time by overwhelming margins. Earth's population supported her completely. She had protected them. She had ensured no one would ever attack Earth again. In her final years, reporters asked if she had any regrets about the war. None, she said every time. They killed 11 million of us. We ensured they would never kill anyone again. That is the responsibility of leadership. To protect your people no matter the cost. She never mentioned the 25 billion. She never acknowledged the classified reports about the rogue military faction. She never spoke about the evidence that the Verani government had been trying to make peace. She died believing, or at least claiming to believe, that everything she had done was right. Earth's relationship with the rest of the galaxy changed fundamentally after the war. Trade dropped by 90% in the first decade. Most species wanted nothing to do with humanity. The few diplomatic relations that remained were cold and formal. Alien students stopped coming to Earth universities. Human tourists found themselves unwelcome on most worlds. A few species tried to form defensive alliances against Earth, but they collapsed quickly. Everyone understood that attacking Earth meant extinction. Earth stood alone, powerful and isolated. New generations grew up learning about the war in schools. The curriculum focused on the 11 million human deaths and the heroic response. Details about Verani casualties were vague. Students learned that Earth had neutralized the threat and ensured peace through strength. Most didn't question it. Why would they? Earth was safe. No one dared attack them anymore. The system worked, but some asked uncomfortable questions. A student named Sarah Novak, named after her great-grandmother who had died on New Hebron, became a historian. She studied the war, dug through whatever records were available, interviewed veterans willing to talk. She found the discrepancies, the classified sections, the sealed documents, the veterans who drank themselves to death or put guns in their mouths. The numbers that didn't add up. She couldn't prove anything. The evidence was too well hidden. But she knew something was wrong with the official story. At 60 years old, 50 years after the war ended, she published a paper titled The Cost of Victory, examining Earth's response to the Verani conflict. It was immediately suppressed. Earth's government classified it as dangerous to national security. Novak lost her university position. But the paper leaked anyway, spreading through underground networks, reaching other species, confirming what many already suspected. Earth had committed genocide. 25 billion dead, an entire civilization destroyed, not just defeated. The galactic reaction was muted. Everyone already knew or suspected. Official confirmation changed nothing. Earth was still too powerful, too dangerous. No one wanted to push the issue, but it changed how humans saw themselves. Some denied it, called it alien propaganda, insisted Earth had done what was necessary. Others felt crushing guilt, realized they were children of monsters, struggled with their heritage. Most fell somewhere in between, uncomfortable with the truth but unwilling to condemn their ancestors completely. After all, the Verani had struck first. Earth had been attacked. What else could they have done? The debate continued for generations. In a small town in Scotland, 90 years after the war, an old man maintained a private memorial in his basement. He was the great-grandson of a Marine who had served under Captain Torres. The memorial was simple. Just a wall with a number carved into it, $25 and $400,000. He brought his granddaughter there when she was 12. She had just learned about the war in school, about Earth's great victory, about how they protected humanity. "What's this number?" she asked. The old man was quiet for a long time. "This is the cost," he finally said. "The school teaches you about the 11 million we lost. That's important. We should remember them. But we should also remember what we did in response." 25 billion, the girl read slowly. "That's how many aliens died?" "Yes, an entire species. Their children, their families, their culture, everything. Gone because we decided they all had to pay for what some of them did." "But they attacked us first," she said, repeating what she had learned in school. "They did," he agreed. "Some of them did. And what they did was wrong. But what we did," he trailed off, looking at the number. "What we did was worse. We became something terrible to stop something terrible. And we never really came back from that." The girl stared at the number, trying to comprehend it. 25 billion. It was too big. Too enormous to really understand. "Was Grandpa Sarah right?" she asked. "Great-great-grandma Sarah? Did we have to do it?" The old man shook his head. "I don't know. I've spent my whole life trying to answer that question. Maybe we did. Maybe there was no other way to make sure we were safe. Or maybe we just chose the easiest path, the most brutal path, because we were hurt and angry and scared." He put his hand on her shoulder. "What I do know is this. We have to remember both numbers. The 11 million who died in the attacks, and the 25 billion who died in our response. If we only remember one, we learn the wrong lesson. What's the right lesson? That survival isn't the only thing that matters. That becoming monsters to fight monsters means everyone loses. That justice and revenge aren't the same thing, even though they feel the same when you're grieving." They stood in silence, looking at the numbers. 11 million on one side, 25 billion on the other. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.